What's happening, guys? Happy Sunday and welcome to the Dynasty WarZone, the People's Dynasty podcast. On today's show, we're going to talk about doing a dynasty rebuild via rookie picks or through rookie picks. And I do have a guest tonight. It is not, in fact, the man of the hour and the man with the power, but it is a first timer here on the Dynasty WarZone. His name is Dustin Royer. And Dustin can be found on Twitter X at all22_FF. He is one of the behind the scenes guys. He's helped with Player Profiler, done a ton of cool stuff within the fantasy industry, and he's going to help me tonight. Dustin, man, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm ready to yap about some rookies, man.
It is the rookie time of year. This is, for me personally, this is when Dynasty and Fantasy get really, really fun. We're about 3.5 weeks away from the Combine, which is great. That's right here in Indianapolis where I live. And then about 6 weeks from now, we have NFL free agency. And I love the offseason. There's like a huge milestone moment every single month. But before we get into that, we're going to have an hour to talk about all that in the body of the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came into doing Dynasty, the content, all the stuff.
Oh, man. So I have been playing fantasy football for a decade as of finishing up last year. When I moved to Pittsburgh, I'm actually from a little bit north of here. I didn't have a car when I was a kid, and I found out I could hoof it to home and catch the football games, Jumped into fantasy then. Typical story like redraft leagues, people steal the money, the internet happens, etc. And I decided to fully jump in with Dynasty, FFPC, a couple of other things a couple years ago. And honestly, I had worked in high level sales, car sales, and I got laid off from my job last summer. And I had been following Player Profiler, getting into, some higher end competitions, more leagues, stuff like that. And Podfather said, send me an email. So I sent the man an email, and I think 45 minutes later, he actually emailed me back, started talking, and, he said he needed some producers for the YouTube channel. So jumped in on that. I jumped in charting all 22 film for the, the data analysis and the stuff that we use. Honestly, I just said yes to anything I could, and I'm here now somehow. Just a guy that plays fantasy football from Pittsburgh, man.
So, well, we're going to give you the opportunity on the big show tonight. And kind of how this meeting came about is you sent me a DM with a good people, bad tweets. We're going to get into good people, bad tweets. So are you doing any startups currently? Is there anything, startup that you want to jump into real quick? We're getting ready to go to our first commercial break. I just want to make sure that is there anything that you want to cover non-rookies before we get going?
I can pull up. I did one startup after the season during the playoffs just to kind of draft some teams, get excited about some guys, and honestly take advantage of what I felt was, some gaps in ADP. So yeah, if you want to do the commercial, I can pull that up real quick. And
well, we will go ahead and we will go into our first commercial break. We'll be right back after a word from the Dynasty Dominator.
Now, I know many of you are looking for a secret weapon for your Dynasty League, and I have it. It's called the Dynasty Dominator app. You go to the App Store, go to Google Play. It's right there. It's $5 to download, and then every year it's $5 to load the next incoming class of rookies. You can add superflex, add tight end premium. It's incredible because it allows you to look up players. It allows you to vote on whether a player is a buy, hold, or sell, and then see the market sentiment on that player. And you can compare their lifetime value rating from Player Profiler to their Dynasty ADP at the FFPC, all in the price lookup tool. And beyond that, we have a trade analyzer, so you'll never lose another Dynasty trade again. And in our settings, you can set this is a win now team, this is a rebuilding team, and then we let you compare players. Look at their metrics side by side, prospect metrics, NFL metrics. It's all there. It's $5 in the App Store. There's some add-ons for superflex and to buy the upcoming rookie class. Every year, you're going to spend $5 on this thing, and it's going to be well worth it.
It will be well worth it, and make sure to check that out. That along with the injury finder, the breakout finder, all those apps. Yeah, I mean, it's all also part of Dynasty Deluxe if you like doing it on a computer, or, you know, you can do it via your phone, but the apps are so much simpler. All right, we're going to go straight into it. We're going to go straight into good people, bad tweets. Now, this guy is an all-timer. He is a first ballot gold jacketer at the good people bad tweets, and he posted one, and you sent it to me. We started conversing, and now you're on the show. And it's David Galtieri. David, none other than Guru Fantasy World on Twitter X. And David says, if you can sell Bucky Irving for Breece Hall, you should do that, like yesterday. Now, you sent this to me. What about this tweet inspired sending it for good people, bad tweets?
Well, so in this startup, Bucky went at the 308 and Breece went at the 304. So I'm not really sure what you're really gaining there, honestly. And with the new coaching staff coming in, with Breece Hall's injuries, you have a quarterback up in the air. I mean, there's just so many things going on there. And I understand that the Bucs are getting a new coach and everything, but a guy like Bucky Irving, you don't just put the genie back in the bottle. You know, like previous fantasy points and previous performance is the best indicator we have for the next year. And I mean, Breece was an RB3. I think when I looked into that originally, he scored something like 10 or 11 fantasy points per game, which you could basically get from any wide receiver 3. So I'm not going to give up a prime, what people value, even if you don't, a top 5 dynasty asset, you know, for a guy that puts up 10 points a week.
Okay. Now, you were selling Bucky Irving last offseason. And
Breece.
I'm sorry, Breece last offseason. What was it? The offense? Was it Nathaniel Hackett who got fired? Was it Aaron Rodgers? Was it a combination of the things? What did you see in Breece Hall that you didn't like in 2024? And could it be better in 25 for him?
So the one thing was everybody was counting on the crazy volume in the passing game, but it wasn't Aaron Rodgers. And honestly, that field, if you look back on history, there have been so many ACL tears, Achilles tears. I mean, we had Saquon Barkley, Rodgers. I think there was somebody else too between the Giants and the Jets. They've been decimated. The weather, Rodgers coming back from the Achilles, it all kind of it didn't look like a situation I wanted to buy into. You know, I saw some negative or positive regression, you know, with, you know, the receiving numbers, etc. And honestly, the value I was able to get for him in the summer, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, he was going as a very high, especially in 1 QB leagues. He was going middle to back half of the first round. Really talented guy. I want him to do well, but I'm curious as to what the quarterback situation is going to be. I'm curious as to what Aaron Glenn's going to be. I think the narrative you're going to hear, and I haven't heard this yet, maybe you've seen it on Twitter X, I have not, is that he'll be like that Jahmyr Gibbs. I can already hear it. He's going to become Jahmyr Gibbs because Aaron Glenn was in Detroit, and then that'll make Braylon Allen, David Montgomery. It doesn't necessarily correlate, but I don't think it could get much worse for Breece Hall. I think he could be of value. I like Breece Hall. But I'm not moving Bucky Irving. We'll wrap this little good people, bad tweets up with Bucky Irving. But do you think he can repeat it? Because 2 years ago, our guy Rashad White had a tremendous season, top 5, 6 running back for the entire season. Then he basically gets his lunch money stolen by Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving finished the season as an RB15 and didn't really have a huge workload until about week 3. So can Bucky Irving do this 2-3 years in a row and give him sustainable dynasty value?
I think so. I mean, if you look at the efficiency, I have Irving pulled up here on playerprofiler.com. So we're looking 10th in the league, receiving yards 11th, receptions 10th, 15th in total touchdowns. Advanced receiving, he was 12th in yards per reception, 1st in catch rate, 11th in yards per route run. Rushing efficiency, 5th in true yards per carry, 6th in yards per touch, 5th in juke rate, 7th in evaded tackles, 6th in explosive rating, 6th in breakaway runs. I could keep going. 3rd in yards created per touch, 8th in premium production, 9th in expected points. And like you said, he didn't even start the whole season. So I think with a full workload, even with what he had last year,
he really came into his own. A guy that this is. I mean, I think you're going to hear a lot of things about the running back position this offseason, especially with the rookies. Such a big rookie class coming in. I don't think that he's in any trouble of losing his job, but he being Bucky Irving, really got inserted as the starter after their bye. The Buccaneers had a week 11 bye. From that point going forward, it was 88 yards. It was 152. He did have the concussion game, 117, 68, 113. I will say if the touchdowns can maybe stay good, then he could be a thing. But yeah, I did like how you wanted to throw one for our boy David Galtieri. So we're going to move on. People are here for rookie content, not good people, bad tweets, not Bucky Irving talk. But here on the show, it's never good people, bad tweets without Dana White. Let's go with Dana White.
How fucking stupid you have to be to even think something like that, let alone say it publicly and act like you're fucking serious.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm giving up Bucky Irving for Breece Hall, but it's closer than it would have been 12 months ago. But let's try to find next year's Bucky Irving, because how do you build? I like to use the term generational wealth. How do you build generational wealth in Dynasty? It's hitting on guys like Bucky Irving. And it sounds weird to say hitting on guys, but without Jerry here, someone's got to hit on guys, and it's going to be me. But when you're doing a rebuild, and we all have that struggling team, maybe you just took over an orphan, maybe you're in the middle of a dispersal. When you're in the middle of a rebuild for your dynasty team, how important is the rookie draft compared to, say, trading for existing players, or I could say waivers, but waivers are so odd in Dynasty. They run at weird times, especially in the off season. So where do you value drafting guys versus trying to build around established guys?
I mean, I think all three of those things have a place. I mean, regardless if you're reloading, you're doing a full teardown, or, say you're doing a 1-year punt out of a startup, rookie picks are going to accrue value as you get closer to the draft. Players might hold value, maybe like injured players will increase in value potentially, but up until those picks are players, up until the draft, I mean, that's value that's not going to change. You can get extra leverage in trades, the ability to sell off, some veteran players if you need to fill gaps. Honestly, the waivers, I think in Dynasty, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say for me, I want to do a little bit of both. And it's not about, especially in a class like the class we have coming up, where it's super loaded. For me, I if you're selling veterans, like if you're doing a rebuild and you've got Mike Evans, right? You've got James Conner, you've got Joe Mixon, you've got Matthew Stafford. These are older pieces that really belong on a contender. The problem with that is that when you have those guys and they're not scoring points, their value is way super down. And what I like to do with rookie picks and rebuilding with rookie picks is, let's say, Dustin, how many teams do you have that may have multiple first-round picks?
I think every team I have except for one has multiple first-round picks.
Okay, and what happens when everybody's on the clock? Everybody wants to draft, right? There's a guy, I got to go get him. I'm super excited about this guy right here. He's on my list. You know, that's where I start going chasing guys like, let's say you had the 107, and it doesn't really matter if it's super flex or tight end premium. Might be a bad choice of players. I'm just looking at a list of players, but like, would you rather have the 107 or Kenneth Walker giving this class?
I'd rather have the 107.
Okay, that's reasonable. Do you think you could get Ladd McConkey for the 107?
I feel like for Ladd, you'd probably have to wait a little closer towards the draft here because Ladd has a lot of hype right now. I was thinking like Chris Olave, Rashee Rice, maybe something like that.
I will ask you on Rashee Rice, since you brought him up. Are you worried about the little mini emergence of Xavier Worthy? A lot of people are super excited about him. I think you could honestly get both. I think there is a better than 50% chance that Travis Kelce could retire after the Super Bowl, win or lose. And if that's the case, those targets have to go somewhere. And yes, I want to build with rookie picks, but you can go back, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 episodes ago, maybe longer. Jerry and I went through rookie picks, especially like 8 and 9 through 12. Mm-hmm. And like the hit rate is so low on those picks. If I could go out, like if I could trade back, another trade that I would build with a rookie pick is, could I get Khalil Shakur and like the 208? Like if I had the 108, could I get Khalil Shakur in the 208 or the 209? Especially knowing how deep this running back class is. Are those moves that you would co-sign?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been targeting guys like Jerry Jeudy, Josh Downs, trying to either split the first and move back or maybe split into the second round since there's such depth at running back. The team that I was talking about where I sold Brees, that was an orphan. And it was my first orphan I've ever bought, super flex. I jumped into sleeper and bought this orphan. It was 10 minutes before the rookie pick, and I realized I didn't have a first or a second round pick, and nobody told me. So I had to get to work, man. I had to look at my roster and find value and make moves.
It's funny you say that. When we do our patron leagues, and that's what we're getting ready to do a startup. Probably after the combine, we'll do our first Dynasty WarZone patron startup league. And that's the one thing that I do is that if you take over one of these teams as a new patron, I pay your first year's entry fee or dues or whatever term you want to use. We've done a couple of dispersals. We're planning on doing a couple of more dispersals. We've been running leagues now. I think this will be going into our 5th or 6th year. Never had a league fold. Everybody gets paid out. So that's patreon.com/Dynasty WarZone. My boy Neil, shout out to Neil Gray. He's the admin. He is doing all that right now. He's making sure guys are coming back, ladies are coming back. He's collecting dues. And then when he's done with his portion, because see, I get to be the good guy, right? I get to be the guy who's like, hey, here's your money. Hey, you won a league. Let me send you some cash. Neil's like the tax collector. He's like knocking on your door. He's like, hey, I got to have the money, but you can't pay out the money if someone doesn't collect the money. All that to say, if you're looking for a patron to join, it's $5 a month. We'll know how many teams we're giving away, for lack of a better term, not too distant future. Patreon.com/Dynasty WarZone. So how many years do you think, with using rookie picks, how many years do you think a good rebuild should take? Or is it like multiple years? Can you do it in one? Is it situation dependent? What does a rebuild with rookie picks look like for you, Dustin?
I don't want to walk into it, honestly, with a timeline, but I would say 1 to 2 years max. Realistically, you want to play in windows. I like to look at my teams in like a 3-year window, especially with the way guys get injured, the way these cliffs are with older guys. You never know if Mike Evans is going to do what he did this year or if he's just going to retire. You know what I mean? And I'm not playing Dynasty to light my money on fire. I love playing. I love drafting. I love trading. But in the end, I want to win. I don't want to stare at my team and hope that it's going to work. So really, I look at it, I want to try to reload. I want to try to stay up on it and reload, but not to force it. I don't want to tear my whole team down and expect 4 or 5 years from now I'm going to contend.
I think you're looking at 2 years if you're doing a good job, and I like the phrasing that you put on it about not wanting to be in that perpetual cycle. I think you could equate this to so many other things in life, whether that's getting assistance or any kind of support or whatever. If you get used to just being in that constant state, you'll always be in that state. If you're constantly rebuilding, it kind of, and I'm in a ton of leagues like this, and this is one thing that I preach against when you quote unquote decide to rebuild is don't do it forever. Have a plan to get in and to get out. And that's what using rookie picks are all about. I see we're getting a lot of support, and we kind of jump-started this thing. I forgot to mention we're on Profiler Plus now. Did I say that right? Because you're the behind-the-scenes guy.
It's
like you
Player
said,
Profiler Now Plus. It's just Profiler Now is basically what we're calling it.
That's where we do all of our live streams. So we were
Profiler Now on X and YouTube, basically everywhere.
And I just wanted to thank everybody in the chat. So at the end, I see Easy B has a trade question. Easy, I will get back because when you interact with us via YouTube, it really spins up that algorithm, which is what we're trying to do as we're trying to grow the new handle Profiler Now Plus. Please check it out. And moving back into some more rookie questions, but I kind of like this, as like if we're talking in a bar. So rookie draft's right around the corner, right? When you're drafting, let's say whatever pick you have, do you feel like you have to take best player available, or do you take the player that fits the need on your team?
I try to take a best player available approach most of the time, just because we're looking at late April, early May when we're drafting. I don't need to set a lineup until September. But say I hit and I have 4 tight ends and everybody wants them, then I can go get whatever running back I need, a wide receiver, etc. I think the one thing, especially right now too, it seems like we're kind of in that. Do you remember the original late round QB era? You could just wait and grab Ben Roethlisberger. You could wait and grab whoever. I feel like if you trade up for a quarterback and it's not the guy, like, and you mortgage your future, you could really, really, destroy your team. And that's probably where you end up looking at one of those perpetual, I'll be good in 4 years, 5 years teams,
I do. And a lot of people, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that the 101 this year is Ashton Genty. And I have always been a believer of, especially in a super flex, if you're taking a running back as a rebuilding team, and even if it's a 2-year rebuild, you're not using those assets to the best of their ability. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't. If you can't get a deal done, then that's fine. But you should be doing everything within your power to not draft a running back 101. And there's not a quarterback in this class worth the 101. Jerry and I have done our initial rankings. I had our friend Dallas Hyder on a couple of weeks ago. He gave us his initial rankings, and everyone is in agreement. There's not a quarterback that's guaranteed to set the world on fire. And we actually, on our patron podcast that we did this week, we did our initial quarterback rankings for a startup, and Jerry is super bullish on Caleb Williams. So whatever you think about Caleb Williams, that's a good asset. And that's what I would be doing with the 101. Like me personally, I would be looking to use the 101 to go get a quarterback. Do you think you could get Caleb Williams for the 101, essentially Ashton Genty? Is that fair? Is that something you would do?
I think you could definitely do it. I think everybody has that sour taste in their mouth from taking Caleb 101. And now, Genty's kind of like the shiny new toy. And this class, I'm one that likes to ride the market. You hear a lot of people say, well, keep trade cuts not real and not my league. But people value stuff by what it says, So if people want to value Ashton Genty like he's worth the 101 a plus, like I'm not going to say no. I think maybe Ben Johnson might make it a little bit harder, though.
Yeah, I do like the Ben Johnson. Is this the first? When we got a trade, we're going to talk about too. I mean, I'm just thinking of quarterbacks. Like, this is going to sound dumb, but if you're in a super flex league, you have to have quarterbacks, and you may not get the 101 again. And I guess you could maybe hold out for Arch Manning, but there are so many young guys that. And you may not have to move back. I mean, you could get Bryce Young plus for the 101. And that's not saying that Bryce Young's a cornerstone piece. I wonder if you could get Trevor Lawrence plus for the 101. You got to kind of look at, and that's why you do startups along with rookie content. And that's why I try to intertwine the two, is because I want to see where those rookie picks are going. And you know what you've done. You know what you've done to me, Dustin. I'm blaming you. That way, when my wife says, "Why are you doing another dynasty startup?" I'm gonna say it's Dustin's fault. I need to go do some market research so that I know where these rookies are going, so I know trades to make. But if you need to know where there are trades to be made, you might want to check out the Dynasty Deluxe.
This episode is brought to you by Player Profiler, the Dynasty Deluxe package. The rankings are the best in the industry. It includes strategy mode, where you can say, hey, change the rankings to be win now. Oh, change the rankings to be productive struggle. There's also a draft planner to help to strategize where you should take players, because the draft planner also includes ADP. There's a trade finder where we look up on My Fantasy League and we see trades that are done, including a particular player. Then there's a trade analyzer where you can plug in draft picks, players, and we assign a lifetime value to draft picks out 5 years. The best thing about our trade analyzer, it can't be gamed with volume. And there's mock draft data to see right now what's the market for player X versus player Y, including in the fall when very few mock drafts are happening. And our Dynasty guide, the Dynasty Dominator, would cost you $10 on Amazon, but you get it for free with Dynasty Deluxe, and you get our rookie guide for free, a $25 value. So you get all of that for $45. I mean, it's a great deal.
It is, in fact, and if you want to make it a better deal, use promo code WarZone at checkout. Save yourself a couple extra of those bucks. All right, let's get into more of the rookies. I do have more as it relates to rebuilding questions, but where are my manners? Who are some of your guys in this upcoming 2025 class? Like, for those of you that are not watching on Player Profiler Now Plus, you're not seeing Dustin decked out from head to toe in Ohio State Buckeye gear. So maybe it's Travion Henderson. Maybe it's Quinshon Judkins. I don't know, but who are your guys, 2 or 3 of them, that you really love in this rookie class?
Well, I will say you shouted him out. So I do have Travion as my RB2. Man, when I look at the film on him, I see everything that we wanted Ken Walker to be, everything we saw out of Breece Hall. I mean, the NFL is looking for those guys that can one cut, and it's just like a 60-yard touchdown bomb down the field. They're gone, and it's really hard to pick them apart. I know he shared a backfield with Judkins, but you look at the pass pro, he's nasty. I'm a little more plugged in. This has been my team my whole life. He actually took some time to change his running style because he was playing so aggressively, he was hurting himself all the time. And you can see that in the way he moves on the field.
I do. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I do like Travion Henderson. I'll be curious to see what the combine shakes out. So I knew with the Ohio State gear, you were going to be an Ohio State guy. Let me rephrase my question. Give me your favorite non-Buckeyes in this class. Could it be Caleb Johnson, who you saw as a guy who probably watches a lot of Big Ten football? Is it I'm going to remove Egbuka from your ability. Maybe it's Luther Burden. Who are some of your other non-Buckeyes?
I'm actually going from my sleepers up into like the higher consensus guys. So I'll throw out Brashard Smith, the running back out of SMU. I don't think anybody had a better Senior Bowl as far as the running backs there. He was a converted wide receiver. He played at Miami, actually. And I was absolutely blown away. I put on this tape of his very first game at running back. And you see the kid transition from traffic, and he has a low pad level, and he jukes, and then he's in the open field, and he's upright, and he's striding, and he's just incredible. I mean, the ceiling for this kid is through the roof. He reminds me of ceiling would be like a Devon Achane. And I mean, listen, it's pre-combine. I'm just looking at tape, but he really reminded me of James White.
James White, for those of you that are younger Dynasty gamers, was an excellent receiving back for the New England Patriots. Yeah, I have been burned in the past by the running back who was converted from a wide receiver, and not necessarily for the wrong reason. I think the mindset of, hey, I'm going to go get a guy who's a natural pass catcher or better than average at pass catching. I think that's step one, right? Like if we were betting parlays, you got to get leg 1 in before you can get leg 2 in so you can win your parlay. It's the same thing. It's great that this particular guy, you said is Rashad Smith, right?
Brashard Smith.
Brashard, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I sent you a highlight cut up on X. Check it out.
I watched him, but I had Rashad White on the brain. So, but a guy like Smith, who can catch the ball, converted wide receiver, it doesn't matter if he's in an antiquated offense where they don't pass the ball to the running backs a lot. Whether that's a Baltimore, I know they have Derrick Henry. Whether it's the Eagles, I know they have Saquon Barkley. I want a running back like that to go land with Sean Payton in Denver, a guy who has a long track record of attaching those guys to the passing game as well as the running game. Anyone else before I start asking you some more rebuild questions?
I would just say quick, watch out for the Iowa State wide receivers, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. They both look like they up their draft stock. They should probably be day 2 picks, I'd say.
Well, there you go. There's some more rookie talk for you. And speaking of rookie talk, I'm going to wrangle up the guys from the Dynasty front office. Those are a couple of 4 guys that do a show on our network. And then next Sunday, we're going to get Jerry back. And not next Sunday. We're going to move it because next Sunday, Dustin, anything going on next Sunday that as I'm trying to produce this thing that I'm forgetting about? Maybe maybe like 6:30 p.m. on a Sunday. Oh yeah, the Super Bowl. So yeah, with the Super Bowl. So with the Super Bowl going on, we will move next week's show, but we are going to do a rookie mock. So make sure you tune in to Player Profiler Plus now. That way you can watch the rookie mock. All right. So when you're trading veterans, this is for me. I'll tell you my philosophy. You can agree, disagree. You can kick me down the road. For me, I'm getting off those veterans. I mentioned names earlier. You mentioned Mike Evans. I mentioned Matthew Stafford, a James Conner, a Joe Mixon. I understand that I'm practically giving those guys away. And what you should have done was move those guys like weeks 8, 9, 10, especially when they were in point scoring season. I think you'll still be able to get a little bit more for like a Mike Evans. But if you can get like a contender second for any of those guys, that would be a steal, and if it's a contender and maybe they won't give you a second in 2025, can you get a contender's 2026 second? There's no guarantee that they're going to contend again in 2025. And B, you can use that 26 to trade back up into the 25 draft if you want to. There's a lot of ways you can go. I'm a realist. I know that when I'm in a rebuild, I'm not afraid to move certain veterans off for a discount during non-point season. How do you handle that? Because you want more rookie picks. Are there any strategies like that I just mentioned that you like to use when rebuilding with rookie picks?
I definitely agree with you as far as selling veterans during point scoring season. That gap between the end of the season and the start of the fantasy playoffs, people want something to do. We were talking about it earlier. We want to trade, we want to draft. And those guys, they're still coming off of scoring points, big seasons. You can look on Sleeper, RB5, RB6. So yeah, I was able to get a first round pick that turned into the 107 for Alvin Kamara last season.
So I'll tell you, in season, I traded Alvin Kamara and Amari Cooper for what was a contender's first, and it ended up being the 108. And
nice.
Yeah, because I did the math. Like in season, I felt like Alvin Kamara was worth like 2/3 of a first. Like I would never take a second for him. But I was like, if Amari Cooper's worth 1/3 of a first to you and Alvin's worth 2/3 of a first, we'll do it straight up for a first. This person was trying to contend. They were hot around our trade deadline, and we made that deal. Another thing that I'm going to do with rookie picks is I'm going to look back to pick up additional capital because we're going to have a lot of guests. Dustin is just like in a long line of guys like Dallas, Jesse Schneeman. We'll have more of the player profiler guys on talking about this rookie class. I'd love to get some of these guys to come talk about their experience at the Senior Bowl. Theo, I'm talking to you. Got to get you on here talking about your experience at the Senior Bowl. But yeah, I like trading back and just getting a little bit. Like if you're rebuilding and you're going to draft a running back, okay? Maybe there's a guy that you love and you just won't move back off of. But if there's like a tier or a bucket of guys that you see 3 of them as all interchangeable, they're all equally rated on your board, you're fine with getting any of them. If I could move back 2 or 3 spots, still get one of those guys and maybe pick up a future second, maybe a current year's third. Those are the kind of deals I like making, because when you're rebuilding, all rookie picks are dart throws. So the more darts you have to throw, the more likely you are to walk away from your rookie draft, being super young because you're going to have a lot of young guys, and B, you're going to have more opportunities. The odds are in your favor. Where are you at on trying to use rookie picks to get even more rookie picks?
I think especially in a rebuild, you always have to look to split your assets. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the rookie draft too. You can go best player available, but if you're already struggling because you have 3 starting quarterbacks and your lineup decisions are screwing you up, don't go draft another quarterback. Here we were talking about, you want to go get the pass catching running back, but it could be a risk. Well, in this draft, it's so deep. I mean, a guy like Brashard Smith, he might be a random 3rd or a random 4th that I picked up because, I traded from the 101 to the 102, picked up the 108, and then I split that for something else. I caught on to that idea of always just asking for a 4th or, a pick swap on a 3rd.
Thank you, by the way. Thank you. Jerry always makes fun of me because every deal I do, I always try to squeeze them for like an extra 3rd. And Jerry's like, I wouldn't bend over and pick up a 3rd if it fell out of my sock. But I'm the exact opposite. Like I'm looking at last year's draft, and this is in a superflex tight end premium league, by the way, 405 in this particular league. And this was a real league with real guys playing for real cash. And Isaac Garindo, who ended up having a good flip opportunity. Cade Stover went at the 412. Cade Stover is a guy that if you didn't watch a lot of Houston Texans football, he's a guy who looks like he could be somebody. 312 last year. Jalen McMillan in this draft, okay? There are guys. Now, for every Jalen McMillan who looks like he's going to be the replacement for Chris Godwin, who's a free agent this upcoming year, you're going to have a Malachi Corley. You're going to have a Javon Baker. But then also in the same 3rd round of this same draft, you had Tyron Tracy, Ray Davis, and Bucky Irving. Boom, boom, boom. That's why you go ask for that 3rd. You want one more guy. You a Mel Kiper fan, first draft fan, anything like that?
I watch about anything. I mean, once you get to this point into football and sports, it's kind of just trying to find anything.
Right. Yeah. I'm aggregating. I'm telling you, one of my favorites. He's always done me well is Greg Cosell. If you can find Greg Cosell on a podcast or a YouTube channel, Greg Cosell, old school NFL films, grinder, those kind of guys. Yeah, but this is why you grind out that extra 3rd, that extra 4th. And
one other thing on those picks, real quick.
Sure.
Something else I look at when I'm splitting and asking for those extra picks is I try to line it up so I own a run, maybe in the 3rd or the 4th. Because like you said, there was 5 different guys, maybe 6, and 3 or 4 of them hit. Well, if I just draft all 5 of them, I don't have to worry about it. And then I can sell 1 or 2 to you for a quarterback later.
Yeah, that's why I've always said in this class, it's like, I'm a baseball coach, and we got Wes Mercer in the chat, and he's like, Harrison Central hat. So if you guys want to know what kind of hat I'm wearing, you got to go to Player Profiler Now Plus. You'll see my hat. No, Wes, this is Heritage Christian High School in Indianapolis. That's where my son plays baseball. That's his high school team. So, and I just like the hat. Good looking hat. So, but yeah, back to the rookie picks, dude, to have a run. Again, I don't care if it's 105 through 107 or 405 through 407. There's always that dart throw you want to make. And to Dustin's point, like if you've made 3 picks in a row and someone will give you a future third for that fourth, you're just, that's another way that you get out of, you know, being in that constant rebuild. Now you got to hit on some of these picks. You got to have lightning strike, but I think that's a tremendous point. One more question, and I do want to answer some questions from the chat. What are some of the biggest mistakes dynasty managers make when trying to rebuild through rookie picks?
Sometimes I feel like we rely on a rookie class to like come in and they're going to fill every gap. You know, I'm guilty of it. I did a 1-year punt last year. I have like Trey Benson and Achane, and I'm going to draft like every running back. But, you know, that's kind of risky, you know. And the same thing can be said with veterans too. I actually have used this as a strategy when I've been trading. You know, most leagues have that guy, like he's like sitting in the middle of points for, and he's like, I'm going to go and I'm going to make the playoffs. And I look at like the team, and I traded him a couple guys that I didn't believe in. I took his picks. He lost and fell out of the playoffs. And unfortunately, we had to fill an orphan in that league. But, you know, I think that's one of the bigger mistakes is just putting all your eggs in one basket, I guess.
One thing, I got distracted talking about the Heritage Christian baseball hat. I was talking about Mel Kiper. And my point with Mel Kiper is, yeah, like I'm aggregating all of this content right now. Theo and my buddy Shane Hallam, another great follow if you're into rookie guys. Ray Garvin, these guys went down to the Senior Bowl. But I was listening to Mel, and Field Yates is now like the co-host of the First Draft podcast. It's like a half hour-ish, 45 minutes, drops a couple times a week. And the reason why I bring it up is I was listening to one within the last week, and Mel Kiper said he had 25 running backs worth with a draftable grade. That was the term they used. 20. Now, does that mean all 25 get drafted? No. But whatever you think about Mel, I mean, he's had his hits, he's had his misses, but we all have. I like that. I like knowing that there are that many guys that are draftable, because we know, especially with running backs, I mentioned Isaac Garindo. You're always a play away from being a play away. Now, for him, it took a series of unfortunate events, but in the middle of the Dynasty playoffs, and I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this, Dustin, you probably could have gotten a contender second for Isaac Garindo because it was the fantasy playoffs. You're going for the money. You're going for the cash. You people will do that. That is the dream if you're a rebuilding dynasty manager. That's why
no one would sell them.
Yeah, I exactly. And that's why I'm getting back to my motto of I'm drafting running backs and I will trade them for wide receivers or quarterbacks or whatever I can get. I'll be honest, we started off the show with a good people, bad tweets, and we were talking about Bucky Irving. You know, Bucky Irving's the kind of guy, God love him. You mentioned some great stats and some things that he did this year. But if I'm in a superflex league and I can get a quarterback for him, okay. If I can get a wide receiver with a similar ADP for Bucky Irving, okay. I'm in. I'm 100% in. I'm going to be drafting the absolute shit out of the running back position. All right, we're going to answer some questions from the chat. If you got questions in the chat, then we will try to get to as many of them as we have in these last few minutes. But I do want to support people. And guys, you know what? We're all football fans. And Dustin, I'm calling an audible. Next week's show, because it's not going to be on Sunday, and I want you to tune in. I want you to go subscribe, Player Profiler Now Plus. That's where all the live streams are going to be. And tune in. I'm going to say it's going to be Monday. I'll speak for Jerry without speaking for Jerry. We're going to try to do next Monday, the 10th, after the Super Bowl. We will do that all Q&A. We'll do that all Q&A. You can come with rebuild questions. You can come with trade questions. You can come with, man, did you hate the Super Bowl questions? Did you see the commercials questions? I mean, we'll do a straight up Q&A. We'll put together a really kick-ass draft for you guys. But we want to support those that support us on everything, our Patreons, our YouTube channels, and that's Easy B. Easy B, this is for you, my guy. He says, I just moved Jordan Love and a 26th third for JJ McCarthy and Rome Odunze. Thoughts on my trade? My QB room was Nix, Love, and Herbert. So he's moved Love, added JJ McCarthy, and still has Nix and Herbert. What are your thoughts, Dustin?
I mean, I guess he's really trading from, a excess value. And I think Rome Odunze is a screaming buy. I mean, JJ McCarthy is coming off an injury. I feel confident that Darnold is not going to be there. The way that Kevin O'Connell has been talking. I don't know. I believe in Herbert. I think Herbert's a QB1 all day, so I would be fine with that.
Herbert, and I'm looking weeks 1 through 17 because the website I'm using doesn't have week 18 because there's no fantasy playoffs. Typically, if you're in a good league, you don't play in week 18. Herbert, in spite of some slow games, like he really got it going down the back end, finished as QB 13 weeks 1 through 17. Love that, and I've been on Rome Odunze this offseason. I'm already the first one to say it, and I've already started to hear people say it. People are going to start calling Rome Odunze next year's Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's the guy who didn't blow it up in rookie, his rookie year. He's going to come on strong. Here's the thing: as much as you're starting to hear that drumbeat for for Rome Odunze, it's only going to go crazier when Keenan Allen re-signs somewhere else. The Bears are going to let him walk. It was super smart of the Bears to go get a guy like Keenan Allen, to give Caleb Williams that veteran that that's just going to be open, even though he's like 37 years old or whatever. He's been in the league forever. When he signs and
a lot of money.
And free agency is about 6 weeks away. When Keenan Allen signs on a new team and people are like, hey, Rome Odunze, it's too late. If you want to go make a move on Rome Odunze, go make a move on Rome Odunze. You know what? I was I don't want to say presumptively, because Jordan Love did have a really good season in 2023. He finished as QB 17 this past year while missing a couple of games. So a borderline QB1. But which Jordan Love are we getting? Are we getting the guy that set the world on fire in 2023? Or are we getting the guy who the league, and this is why I don't tend to get super hyped on quarterbacks, especially after one good year, because then defensive coordinators, they get another full year to look at you. They can game plan for you. I'm talking to you, speaking of Ohio State Buckeyes, I'm talking to you, CJ Stroud. You came in, set the world on fire, slower sophomore season, but Easy B, buddy, I love that trade, and I think you did good. Dan B says he has picks 1, 4, 12, 16, 24, one QB league. Dan, I don't know how to tell you this, but in 2025 rookie picks, they're all, you can 1 QB, 2 QB, no QB. It doesn't matter. Not a ton of good QBs. I guess you could maybe squeeze in a couple. Don't need a quarterback or a tight end. Best plan to make picks 1 and 4 and try to move the others. So I think what Dan's asking is that, how many of those picks? He says he's got 5 picks in the top 24, got 20% of the first 2 rounds locked up. How many of those picks are you making, and how many are you trading?
So I was actually doing a couple mock drafts in a league where I'm in a very similar situation. And I think I'm going to be a little more aggressive to grab the couple top skill position players either way. Like a Emeka Ibuka, a Luther Bird, and especially if they get the first round draft capital. I know he said he didn't need a tight end, but Tyler Warren, even maybe Travion or Caleb, if they go, say Dallas and they get drafted high. Just because your team doesn't need it doesn't mean that your league won't value it, and somebody might have what you need on their team already.
Yeah, I will take you a step further, Dan. I'm definitely making the 1 and the 4 because this is a 1 QB league. And as much as you can't really get this thing turned around quickly in a superflex league without a quarterback, in 1 QB leagues, you have to have running backs. It's the exact opposite. It as much as I want Ashton Genty, in a superflex, I want a quarterback more, a serviceable guy who can be a QB1 for me. But in a 1 QB league, you are taking Ashton Genty. It is not a question. It is not a debate. They would have to give you everything under the sun, including a puppy, for me to move at that 101. And then the 104, I'm going to be honest, I'm probably keeping that too. I'm going to be looking wide receiver there. I think wide receiver, especially in, when you're valuing wide receiver and running back. I mean, Mike Evans is a great example. We all wanted to draft Mike Evans. If you drafted Mike Evans and you were playing Dynasty in 2014, you're still using Mike Evans 10 years later. Now go look at the running backs from 2014. They're not there. They're just not there. So
CJ Anderson,
Zeke, and I'm not taking a shot at Zeke. Zeke finally, he was great for like 4 or 5 years. So I'm definitely going Genty, and I'm going my favorite wide receiver there. Could it be Luther Burden? Luther Burden. Could it be Tet McMillan? Could it be Egbuka? It could be any of those guys. Maybe there's someone else that you like, but I'm definitely drafting at the 1 and the 4. And then when you get to that 12 and those later picks, because there's going to be so many running backs there, and that's a great opportunity. Can you move the 12 for someone's first next year? We're going to have some more quarterbacks next year. The draft class of quarterbacks is going to be a little bit better, although this is a 1 QB league. I think that's how I would approach that right there. I'm definitely drafting the 1 and the 4. I'm hoping to land both picks. I'm hoping to get solid value and production with both picks and make those guys 2 of my 4 tentpole players. That's how I build a dynasty roster. I want 4 tentpole players in a super flex. I want 1 QB, 1 running back, 2 wide receivers, and in a one QB, I want at least 1 running back and 3 wide receivers. I'd also accept if you had like an elite tight end in there. We can certainly, if you had a Brock Bowers, even if it wasn't tight end premium, I'm looking to get those 4 guys, and then I fill in the rest. All right, Dynasty Football Key. We will answer your question next week because it says, who are you? Oh, is that Alex from Player Profiler?
Yeah.
Okay. Alex/Dynasty Football Key. We will answer that question next week. And then A1, make sure you're back next week because I will have deep dove into all of the information coming out of the Senior Bowl. I'll be honest, it's Sunday evening, the weekend of the Super Bowl, and the Royal Rumble. Now, are you a pro wrestling fan, Dustin?
Casually, my brother and my uncle were like die-hard wrestling fans, so I kind of absorbed it to the side. But like we were talking backstage, I got to watch LaDainian Tomlinson growing up, and I fell in love with football ever since.
Well, the reason why I bring it up is the Royal Rumble last night took place here in Indianapolis, and it took place at Lucas Oil Stadium where the Colts, play. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not a high school coach. I'm a travel coach of high school age baseball players, and one of our biggest fundraisers is working concessions at big events. And the lady who runs the thing, they were really short on volunteers last night. And I think that was, first of all, it was the biggest non-WrestleMania crowd the WWE has ever had. At 67,000 people
Wow.
at Lucas Oil last night. So I was working. I'll be honest, I did not get to see a ton of the Senior Bowl stuff this week. It's on my to-do list this week to sit down and really look into the Senior Bowl and be able to answer some questions. All right, I'm going to get you out of here. I want to ask you one more question because it came from the Player Profiler Now Plus chat, and it's Jamie. Jamie, one of our most regular supporters here. He says, do you think Ashton Genty will be considered a top 5 dynasty running back right away? I'm going to answer that. It's yes. If you told me he was 4 or 5, I'm fine. You know, if you told me it was Gibbs and Bijan and maybe you're going to give Breece Hall another shot or whatever, I can't think of 2 other guys given the age that would be in the top 5 for running backs. You can't go Barkley. He's going into year 8. Jonathan
Maybe
Taylor. Achane would. I think that's the one. I think that's our 5. I think it's 1 for me. It's 1 Gibbs, 2 Bijan Robinson, 3 Devon Achane. Going to go 4 Breece Hall. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's still young, another year removed from the ACL. And I'm going to go Genty. And if you want to go Genty at 3 or 4, I'm totally fine with that. So Jamie, to answer your question at the end here, I'm going to say he's already a top 5 dynasty running back. What say you, Dustin?
Yeah, he already is. I mean, everybody's already basically made it consensus. He's the 101 and he's a top 5 running back, and he's going to have to prove otherwise. And I don't think he will.
You know what? I think it will be very, very landing spot dependent. Because I think he'll be a good back. He being Genty will be a good back regardless of where he goes. But there are a few ideal, perfect landing spots.
Okay.
Whatever you think about Brian Schottenheimer, that would be a wonderful landing spot for Ashton Genty. I tell you right now, if by some bit of fate or magic or witchcraft or whatever it is, if Genty were to wind up as the lead back in Denver with Bo Nix and that Sean Payton offense, the way that they use the running back in that offense, think Alvin Kamara in his peak. If you said you wanted to move Genty to the 102 because he landed in a spot like that, I'm down. Easy.
Definitely.
Well, there you go, Dustin, man. Hey, thanks for jumping on. Everything, there was some scheduling stuff and some stuff behind the scenes, but everything happens for a reason. And you being able to come on with me this week when Jerry was unable to go was a blessing. So, man, I want to thank you not only for jumping on tonight, but for all the stuff you do behind the scenes at Player Profiler. If you enjoy Player Profiler content at all, then you may just be now getting to meet and get familiar with Dustin, but he's done a lot of good stuff that you enjoy. Please follow him on Twitter X at all22_FF. Anything for these fine people before we get you out of here?
All I'll say, speaking on Brian Schottenheimer, if you remember Antonio Gates, draft whatever tight end they take.
I will tell you, Jake Turd Ferguson is going to be the guy. Maybe they can't afford him, but I do like that. This is why you want to be a good host, and thank you for sticking around this far. But this is why I love the show. We're going to get into, because you start having a conversation and this conversation leads to that conversation. I feel like Joe Rogan. I'll never be Joe Rogan, but I know I have like that Joe Rogan brain, and like we've been scattershot a little bit tonight. I could really use someone like Jamie, but man, we're going to continue to get into the impact of these coaching hires, these offensive hires, free agency. This is why I love the offseason. This is why I love the offseason. There's so many conversations to be had. There's so many ways to take advantage of it. Again, big shout out to Dustin. He came in. He was clutch in the clutch. And we didn't even talk about who won the Royal Rumble. We didn't talk about the Luka Doncic, Antonio Davis trade. There was so much stuff we could have talked about, but you'll have to come back next week. And if you have questions about the Royal Rumble, or you have any questions about the Doncic and Davis trade, come back next week, subscribe, turn the notifications on. You'll see Dynasty WarZones live. Oh yeah, I'm going to go ask some questions because I need answers. And guys, we want to thank you for tuning in. Remember, on behalf of Dustin, I am Memphis, and here at the Dynasty WarZone, we're just trying to make the world a better place for fantasy football. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you soon.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.